Yin Beicheng fingertip micro movement for a long time did not answer. Inimo Shanla thought he did not agree with this practice. He suddenly smiled as like scattered light, especially warm and soft. Well, you can rest assured I will certainly protect you. Speaking, the palm cannot help but slightly tighten, tightly grasp the hand of flowers on the street. Imo Shanla, Qingyo's eyes suddenly to his so affectionate eyes. The heart suddenly can't control the soft down, can't help but gently back to hold his hand. But a moment later, she took her hand back and said, "Now, you should go to see Shueji. You must calm down for a while." Yin Beicheng scratched his hair and said, "I have to deal with those women every day. It's really a worry." As he said this, he still had to walk out. Before he left, he didn't forget to tell him, "I have a lot to do these days. You should take good care of yourself." In a small village in the outer suburbs, there are about dozens of people in a narrow courtyard. These people are dressed in ordinary people's clothes, but they are more or less injured, and their breath is not as peaceful and honest as ordinary people. On the contrary, they have a sense of killing. A man with a scar on his cheek bypassed the people in the courtyard and went to the innermost thatched cottage. When he saw the people inside, he said, "Head, since we escaped from the city, there have been letters for 3 days." The person who was called to be the head was injured on the palm of his hand and wounded with bandages one layer after another. Hearing the words, his eyes could not help sinking. "Is it true that there is no news?" The man nodded, with a worried look on his face. "Half a cent is not available. My subordinates think that it may be because of the tight check at the gate recently that the news can't come in." Fart. The muscles on the face of the person who was called the head twitched suddenly, and his face was completely gloomy. "We are the only ones exposed. Their information has always been the best among us. Who can't be deceived if it can't be passed in? I think they are ready to give up on us." The man's face turned pale and indignant. "We've done so many things for our master. In the end, we've become an abandoned son." After a pause, the man said, "Head, we have been forced to share now. There are portraits of us in the gateway city, and all of them are heavily guarded. The money we robbed is useless. We can't send it out or spend it. The brothers don't have much dry food. I'm afraid they won't last for a few days. Brothers can't be less." The man bit his teeth, then stood up and said, "I can't watch the brothers starve to death. In this case, we have to be real robbers." In a room of the post house, some of the rich businessmen who had made trouble in front of the king's house that day got together again and sat around a round table. Wu Cheng sat in the middle and said with a bad face, "You guys, it may have been 3 days since we went to the palace these days, but we haven't seen anyone. Now, we haven't recovered the goods, and the promise of the palace hasn't been fulfilled. It can be said that we are 2 people in money. Now, you can believe what I said that day. Princess Yu is a real man liar. What she promised won't come true at all." One of the rich merchants, who came from a moon kingdom with Wu Cheng, suddenly became dark. He patted the table and said angrily, "I don't think there's a good thing between the King Yu and the Princess Yu. After such a fight, the King Yu didn't even show his face. It's really ridiculous to put the matter on such a woman." "Who said it wasn't?" One of the rich businessmen also opened his mouth, and his face was also a little angry. "My goods and money add up, but if the business of thousands of liang is smashed here, how can I face the people of the clan when I go back?" A few people immediately aroused the anger of the rich businessmen with your eyes. One of them could not help but stood up and said, "I think we'll go to the palace again. If they still make a fuss with us like that, we'll learn from the common shrew. In a word, as long as we can minimize the loss, I don't care so much. Yes, let's go now. We must let her keep her promise and pay us the money according to the price." With these words, everyone's emotions suddenly became excited. They all wished that they could not fly to the gate of the palace immediately, as if they could recover all their losses. Just then, the door, which had never been heard, was suddenly knocked from the outside. All the people in the room immediately calmed down and looked towards the door. "Who is so unruly? Don't you know the masters are talking business?" Seeing that all the people were silent, Wu Cheng simply opened his mouth, and there was no good spirit between the words. Chinya, who was behind the flower, listens to the movement in the house, and says, "If you don't want to see the people you want to talk about, let's go now." Having said that, she and the flower on the street have never moved half a minute. Several people looked at each other for a while, and then a slightly kind-hearted man came forward and opened the door. When he saw that the visitor was really a stranger, he made way. Mo Shanghua is also not polite and directly walked in on the way out of the way. Several wealthy businessmen see behind Mo Shanghua, except for a little girl named Qinya, who seems to have nothing with her. Just now, they thought that she was coming to make amends and give money away. They said something bad about others at Jia Shanghua and were arrested. They can't help looking strange. No one spoke first, and no one got up to salute. Seeing that the crowd didn't speak, Wu Cheng broke the silence and had no good way. "Oh, isn't the princess very busy these days? Why did she come here in such a hurry today? But all the things in hand have been finished, so she just had time." Mo Shanghua's delicate cheek didn't make any waves, and his quiet eyes just glanced at Wu Cheng, which seemed to be a great deterrent and calmed all the people's words. "Master Wu Heir, if you want to do business in the kingdom of God, Yuzhou is the place you can't pass. You'd better leave some face for us. Otherwise, how can we meet in the future?" You say, but this is the truth? These words immediately surprised the foreign businessmen who had been incited and wanted to tear their faces with Mo Shanghua in a cold sweat. It seemed that they suddenly remembered Mo Shanghua's identity and quickly stood up. Yes, the princess is right. Yes, Lao Wu, what's the matter with you? How can you talk to the princess like that?" "That is, the princess has promised us before, so we will not break our promise. Lao Wu, we have to believe the princess." Just now, the rich businessmen who had a very bad attitude towards Mo Shanghua suddenly changed their faces and turned their guns one after another, standing opposite to Wu Cheng. "I'm joking. If they have a grudge in the heart of the stranger, they will be ordered to go down by the stranger when they pass Yuzhou in the future, and let the gate detain their things for 10 days and 8 days. Then do they want to do business or not? Yuzhou is a piece of fat. They don't want to lose it." Wu Cheng's face suddenly became extremely ugly. He couldn't help but said angrily, "You didn't say that just now. Why, now everyone is starting to be a son of a bitch." When he said this, the other rich businessmen turned black. However, due to the presence of Mo Shanghua, he didn't say much. And Mo Shanghua looked at this scene with light eyes. His mind turned, and he suddenly turned his previous thought and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have been counting the things you lost in the mansion before. Now I have finished counting, but I really don't have so much money now. The Imperial City has already written back about this matter for 100 years. You might as well wait patiently. The inspector is very happy we'll be in Yuzhou soon. At that time, we'll pay you a lot of compensation for your losses. We'll certainly catch those bandits." Seeing this, the rich businessmen, except Wu Cheng, coveted it face to face for a while. The man who had come out to open the door earlier replied, "We, the people, have lost a lot in total. In this case, we will wait for a few days." Wu Cheng saw this, but his face changed greatly. He stood up and said, "Are you trying to say something? Don't forget that you said you had to pay out of your own pocket that day, but now you've changed the story. Don't think you can kill us at will. Those compensations must be handed in today, otherwise I will certainly go to your imperial city." When he said that, he immediately embarrassed other rich businessmen. After all, they had just accepted it. Now Wu Cheng has not thought about it for them. It's just nonsense. Wu Cheng now only cares about his heart, but he doesn't know that he doesn't like the flowers on the street. In this way, he will only be more aware of the flowers on the street. Sure enough, no matter he was so irritable and mischievous, the flowers in the street didn't stir up any waves in his eyes. He said, "Everyone else has agreed. Since Master Wu Heir is so dissatisfied with this matter, I naturally want to take care of Master Wu Heir first." With that, she turned her eyes and ordered Qinya behind her, saying, "Qinya, let Qin Lin bring things in." Qinya's eyes turned. Instead of going down to take it immediately, she frowned and said, "But princess, those things didn't have to be distributed first." "Qinya, a word is not finished." Mo Shanghua will directly interrupt her words, with a sense of blame, I used to teach you. Chinya flattened her mouth and muttered in a low voice, "Yes, I know. I'll go now." Finished saying, this just full face, unwilling to go down. This half said, left half of the words, suddenly let the rich businessman face a bit confused, seems to be puzzled. Mo Shanghua Yuguang put this scene into his eyes, but he didn't explain it all. He only looked at them with a little regret. The maid at home is always like this, but I'm not strict with her. Just then, Chinya came in again, followed by Qin Lin, holding a tray covered with red cloth. Mo Shanghua then walked to the side of Qin Lin and lifted the red cloth. Only then could they see that on the tray covered with red cloth, gold was placed one by one, full of the whole tray. Mo Shanghua seems to be unable to see people's puzzled eyes and directly focuses on Wu Cheng. "Master Wu Heir, these are all yours now. I think they should be enough for your goods and money." So much gold, of course, is enough. However, Wu Cheng could not help thinking of the gold that had arrived, but had not covered the heat at all. He said, "What I'm transporting this time is worth thousands of gold. Can it be that you're sending someone to beg for food?" The rich businessmen on one side are all red-eyed. Now when Wu Cheng says this, he says half of what he says before he thinks of Chinya. He suddenly understands it in his heart, but it's hard to say. He is dissatisfied with Wu Cheng. At the beginning, it is clear that he has been jumping up. They went to the palace together to make trouble. Just now, they were still talking with him in such indignation. Why? Now he's the only one who gets the benefit. On the street, Huai Yuguang glanced at the people's faces. He thought that he didn't directly reject Wu Cheng. He was a little cheerful. "In this case, I'll add you some gold," said. Side-eye looked at Chinya one eye. Chinya, discontented flat mouth, but still obediently went down to prepare. After a while, a smaller tray came with a lot of gold. "Princess, all our possessions are here. No harm." The flowers on the street just smile lightly, and there is not much moving on their face. However, the next second, her face suddenly changed, and her voice sank a little bit. "But these are not what you deserve. I have already calculated what you have lost before. What you have given before is enough. These should not have been yours. Since you want something that doesn't belong to you, you should not step into Yuzhou in the future." After a pause, she added, "I only give you half a day. If you don't leave Yuzhou in half a day, I can only send someone to send you out in person." Send, word she particularly bite heavy pronunciation, which means self-evident. Smell speech. Wu Cheng complexion this just changed, hurriedly way. "You this words is what meaning? You, what do you put us foreign businessmen?" Then he thought of other rich businessmen and turned his eyes to them. Those rich businessmen have just been discontented by Wu Changsheng. Now they see that the flowers on the street are not easy to provoke. They all pretend that they can't see them. They turn around and pretend to chat with others. Seeing this, Mo Shanghua doesn't want to be entangled with Wu Cheng. She turns her eyes to Qin Lin and says, "Take a few people with you to stay here and urge Master Wu Heir to clean up and get ready to leave." Yes, the slave will send Master Wu Heir out of the city. The princess can rest assured. Qin Lin deliberately raised his voice to respond. The flower on the street nodded slightly and then left without looking back. Seeing this, other rich businessmen ignored Wu Cheng's request for help and left one after another. Wu Chengjian had no one left, and his face turned red. If Qin Lin hadn't been there, he would have been attacked on the spot. Being forced out of Yuzhou like this, so shameless things spread out on him. Don't be laughed to death when it comes out. What's more, he wanted to make atonement in the family, but he was afraid that it would be ruined again. If the elder brother knew, he would reprimand him severely. "This time, I really lost my wife and lost my soldiers. It's really bad luck. It's extremely bad luck." The words of Mo Shanghua had been abandoned, and Qin Lin and others were specially sent to urge him. Other rich businessmen refused to lend a helping hand. In this way, he naturally had to pack up his things and get out of Yuzhou City early. It was evening when he went out. He wanted to find a place in the suburbs for a rest. Unexpectedly, the carriage just stopped and was stopped by dozens of people. All of them were covered with black scarves, holding long swords. The blade of the sword was cold in the half-exposed moonlight. Suddenly, Wu Chang was scared to death. He trembled and said, "Everyone, you guys, you can take whatever you want. The small one will never hide." Those people didn't have time to listen to his nonsense. They dragged him up from the carriage and wanted to get on the car to search. Before I had time to search, I suddenly saw that an army was galloping along the official road leading to Yuzhou in front of them, and a group of troops were galloping towards them in the direction leading to the next city behind them. The horses' hooves fell on the ground and rolled up a cloud of smoke. "No, boss, we've got a trick." Scarface C-shape busy shouted. However, it was too late at that time. Under the attack, they had no chance to escape. Wait until the near future. The flower on the street then drew the rain, stopped. The Mao lightly swept to those remnant dozens of people, have not spoken. If these people are really dead men, it is useless to persuade them to surrender. They will only fight to the last lesson. Therefore, she has no intention to speak. Sure enough, the next second they saw that those people did not hesitate to put up a knife to kill them, as if they wanted to get out of the siege. Seeing this, Mo Jiang directly ordered his soldiers to meet him. There was a big difference in the number of people on both sides. Dozens of people on the other side were defeated before long, and even a few survived. However, how could those living people easily submit to the law? They just wanted to commit suicide after being captured. Mo Shanghua's eyes had been staring at the people who were captured alive. As soon as they saw signs of suicide, he drew a few silver needles between his fingers and stabbed them directly into their respective acupoints, making him temporarily unable to move, which hindered their self-confidence. The princess is really hidden. Mo Jiang, Mo Shanghua, just small action income eyes bottom can't help but across a bit of thoughtful color. Mo Shanghua gently hooked the corners of his lips and gave a faint smile. Without explanation, he turned over and dismounted. He broke off the mouths of those who had just been sealed by himself and took out the poison hidden between their teeth. Then he turned over and dismounted again and raised his voice and said, "Back to the city. General, what about this man?" A soldier pointed a lie under the horse. "I don't know, is to be frightened fainted, or how of Wu Cheng?" Toward Ma Jiang asked. "Just wake up and don't worry about the others." Mo Jiang turned his eyes to see the flowers on the street. After thinking about it, he said so. "Yes." The soldier answered and called another man to lift Wu Cheng out of the carriage, then squatted down, patting Wu Cheng on the cheek and calling. However, no matter how he patted his cheek, Wu Cheng didn't react. The soldier was suspicious and raised his hand to explore his nose. His face suddenly changed. "General, Princess, this man is not angry." This words, a Mo river and Mo flower's face is instant changed. Hurriedly all turn over dismount. Hurried to Wu Cheng's side. Mo Shanghua grabs Wu Cheng's stout wrist and puts his 3 fingers between his veins. If it is true, as the soldiers said, there is no movement in the pulse. Even the body has begun to cool down. Mo Jiang also reached out to touch Wu Cheng's main artery. His voice sank a little. Wu Cheng's identity is extraordinary. After all, he is the richest man in the Moon Kingdom. Now he is dead in China. It's really troublesome. Mo Shanghua takes back the hand between Wu Cheng's corpses, eyes slightly coagulate. Take his corpse back first and make a long-term plan. I've seen that Wu Cheng's death is not ordinary. He died of poisoning. It's the same kind of poison as Yunji and Shueji. It seems that these 3 things may be related. Lu Zhonggang has just examined Wu Cheng's body, and then he cleans up the things in his hand and comes to the front of Mo Shanghua Yanbei City. Mo Shanghua twists her palms and frowns lightly. At first, I didn't care too much about Yunji's affairs. Later, Shueji's affairs didn't have much time to check. But now it seems that this is calculated by others. Together, these 3 things clearly have their origins. Lu Zhong tapped on the table with his fingers, and his eyes were half thoughtful and half puzzled. However, no one has taken over the matter of Yunji so far. It's a hasty understanding, and there's no clue about Shueji now. Except for Wu Cheng, the rest of the things can't be seen. On the one hand, it's the most puzzling thing. Dr. Liu, no. Brother Liu, you and I can be regarded as confidants and have helped me a lot. When I talk to you, I don't care about that much. The shimmering light in Mo Shanghuang's quiet eyes turned slightly, and Lu Zhang's eyes were full of trust. I didn't think of anything about the first two things. Maybe Yunji's death was for the sake of calming things before. As for Xueji, I felt that she might have something to do with the bandits. Lu Zhang stroked his sleeve and said thoughtfully, "It seems that all of the three people are poisoned by the same kind of poison, but Xueji is the only one with the shallowest poisoning and no worries about her life. Now, the Lord is still with her." Mo Shanghua shakes her head and looks solemn. "No, I think her purpose should be more than just for Wang Yi." "Brother Liu, do you know that when she was poisoned that day, General Mo had stopped the bandits at the gate of the city? I think her purpose was to delay time." After a pause, her eyes were slightly deep, and she used to be unknown, but now one after another began to change. "I think it should be this matter involving her master. Xueji is really a biting dog." Lu Zhang eyebrows a deep frown. "If so, then have to be careful. I don't know if the Lord has any idea about it. He'd better go and give some advice later." It's just that there's something more important right now. Thinking about it, he could not help but raise his eyes and looked at the flowers anxiously. "But now Wu Cheng's death, how do you plan to deal with it? The inspector sent by the Imperial City will arrive at Yuzhou in 3 days at the latest." Mo Shanghua drooped his eyes, thought about it a little, and said, "At present, it's natural to find out the cause and effect of this matter first. If it's really impossible, we can only count Wu Cheng's death on the bandits for the time being. In this way, the Emperor can pay more attention to these bandits. Now, that's all." Lu Zhang's brow was not loosened. "If necessary, I can help you whitewash the signs of poisoning on Wu Cheng's body. Not for the time being." Mo Shanghua shakes her head and stands up. "There's nothing in her ink like eyes. I want to go out and have a look myself." Lu Zhang saw that she was mysterious and didn't mean to say much. It could be seen that she was also uncertain in her heart, so she didn't ask much. Mo Shanghua changed his men's clothes, then quietly went out of the palace and went to Qinghuan Pavilion of Hui Qianliu. She came to Qinghuan Pavilion many times, and the maid in the pavilion knew her very well. She went forward and said with a smile, "Mr. Mo is here. I'll go to arrange the elegant room, prepare tea and snacks, and then invite him to come." Mo Shanghua grabbed her and gave her a faint smile. "Girl, don't bother. I'll just sit outside today." After a pause, her eyes swept around the hall. This stand is built around the middle stage of the hall. At this time, several beautiful young girls are playing the silk bamboo pipa on the stage. The spectators around are drinking and chatting or lighting the table to listen to the ditty. It's not noisy. Compared with other places, it's naturally elegant. "Give me a pot of wine and 2 dishes of dessert." Mo Shanghua saw this, then said again. He found a seat close to the crowd and sat down. The maid was blessed and went down to give orders. Before going out, she said to another maid at the door, "As usual, go and tell the young master." As soon as the flower came, she went to inform Hua Qianlu first. The maid was very familiar with this matter, so she nodded. "Needless to say, I know. I'll go now. Go ahead and do your work first." In such a quiet and elegant place, the flower's heart calmed down for a while. He could not help holding up the wine pot and pouring himself a glass of wine. Just like the ordinary rich children, he enjoyed the girls on the stage while drinking. It seems so leisurely, but in fact, her ears are also quietly watching the gossip of the people around her. If information spreads rapidly, the fastest place is the brothel. If not, how can Hui Qianliu's intelligence organization be so powerful? It's not because he has this Qinghuan Pavilion in his name, which is full of all parts of the kingdom of God. Ah, have you heard that the rich businessmen from neighboring countries were robbed a few days ago? It seems that one of them took the lead to make trouble in front of the palace that day. He offended the princess and was driven out of the city first. Now, he is not even able to save his life. Of course I heard. I heard that I was poisoned. A few days ago, a good friend of mine made friends with King Yu. I went to King Yu's house once. I also heard that a concubine in the house was poisoned when she was having dinner with the princess. Up to now, there's been no result. This woman went crazy and poisoned one when she first entered the mansion, and now another is forbidden. Tut tut, this method is really cruel. Yes, even those who are from other countries have no scruples. As long as they offend her, they will have no fruit to eat. How can such a poisonous woman be respected as a royal concubine? If I were a prince, I would have given her up early. Sitting on the street, a table not far away from the flower was chatting in a low voice. Suddenly speaking of this, he got excited. Even his voice was much higher. After listening to the guests at the next table, they couldn't help echoing, "Is there such a vicious woman in the world? I really don't deserve to be the princess of Yuzhou. I'm unfortunate in Yuzhou. I'm unfortunate." These people talk in twos and threes. After a while, people in the whole hall begin to discuss the strange flowers. What they say is nothing more than such remarks. For a moment, the hall, which was originally quiet and elegant, was suddenly noisy. They were all spitting and excited, but the people they were talking about were sitting in this hall at that time. Imo Shanghua listens to the talk of people around her. She can't help but tighten her hands and lock her brows tightly. She has always been unafraid of this rumor, but it's usually quiet if she doesn't listen to it. Now, almost all the people in Yuzhou City are dissatisfied with her. How could she really not make waves? This rumor, in the end, is still formidable. Just thinking, the wine cup she was holding in her hand was touched lightly with the wine cup, and her wandering thoughts were immediately pulled back. Hua Qianlu, holding the wine cup in her hand, sat down in front of her and drank all the wine in the cup. Fong said, "Why? But my place is not elegant enough, so you can't enjoy it? It's just holding the glass, but it doesn't go down." The frown of the flower on the street was a little loose. He raised his hand and took the wine to his lips to drink. He said, "When is the flower young master so free? He has time to accompany his guests at any time. I'm not as relaxed as I look at you." Flower thousand willow lips, cape slightly stir up, with a bit specious meaning. "Today in this hall a little noisy. How about we go upstairs elegant room and talk?" "No, my business is over." Suddenly, a layer of light color covered his eyes. He took out a few pieces of silver from his sleeve and put them on the table. He got up and left. Hua Qianlu didn't feel embarrassed. She raised her hand and picked up the wine pot on the table. She gently shook it with her wrist. Her lips were filled with a smile. "I drank a lot of wine." Just as he was talking about it, the maid who had just welcomed the flowers from the street came to the table. Fu Shun saluted and said, "Young master, the Lord is here. I'd like to invite you to drink." Hua Qianlu slowly got up, raised her hand to open the folding fan that had not been opened and closed, and habitually put it on her chest to shake it gently. She walked lazily and casually to the second floor. Imo Shanghua wanted to go around the front door of the palace as usual and climb over the wall in the backyard. But when she got to the front door of the palace, she glanced at it and saw a man in a black cloak talking to the guard in front of the palace. The cloak was so wide that it covered the face of the man under it. Not to mention his face, he didn't even show his fingers, but he looked like a woman. Imo Shanghua's heart moved, and she quickly flashed into the side lane to hide, but her eyes were staring at the man with the cloak. The cloak man came out of the palace. So late at night, he didn't know what to say to the guard. The guard let him go and let him go. When the cloaker got out of the palace, he turned straight to the alley on the side of Mo Shanghua. Seeing this, Mo Shanghua quickly and gently jumped to the roof and squatted down to pay close attention to the cloaker's whereabouts. The cloaker didn't find the flowers on the street. After glancing around, he closed his eyes and continued to walk forward. This cloaked person's vigilance is not small. The stranger flowers simply all the way along the eaves leap jump, so all the way to the end did not notice. The cloaker turned left and right in the city lane and finally entered an inn. At this moment, there must be no one in the inn. She was afraid that she was too conspicuous and that she knew herself. After thinking about it, she first looked at the door and determined which room she went to. Then she went directly to the roof and found the room. She gently uncovered a small tile and leaned over the eaves to find out where the room was. A small hole was exposed after the tiles were lifted, and the room looked inside. The furnishings in the house are very common, and there is nothing special about it. If there is something unusual, it is at this time when everyone else should have a rest, but there are several candle lights in the house. The cloaker had already sat down in front of the square table in the room. A woman was sitting opposite her. She couldn't really see her face, but they seemed very familiar. After they nodded to each other, the cloak took off the cloak and showed his true face. "Sister, I've been waiting for a long time." Although Shanghua couldn't see the person's face clearly, the voice was very real. Such a voice, coupled with the familiar figure. Wasn't it Shueji who was always bothering in front of her these 2 days? But who is her sister? Thinking of this, the flowers on the street can't help but hold their breath and stare at the 2 people in the room. The man who was called elder sister went to a cup of tea, but he didn't send it to Shueji. Instead, he put in front of himself and said with a smile, "Recently, the situation is special. There are some strict restrictions in the house. My younger sister doesn't need to say that." Shueji gently pulled up the corner of her lip and gave a faint smile. "My sister didn't say that recently. The wind is tight. Shall we meet less? Why did you call me in such a hurry now? But what's the big deal? Nature is the most important thing." South Crane Wu from twist teacup shallow drink, then slowly weigh. The imperial city to the inspector. There are 3 days to come. That matter. You can entrust ready? Shueji helped her sideburns, smiling between her eyes and eyebrows. "My sister forgot, but I haven't done anything before. Can the rest of them make mistakes? You can rest assured that she will die this time." Looking at Shueji's self-confident Yang in front of him, Nanny's eyes can't help but scratch a bit of sarcasm, but he doesn't show half of it. "Since my sister is so self-confident about this, I don't care much about it." Then he got up and left. Seeing this, Shueji quickly raised her hand on the table and said, "Sister, this is not finished yet." See South craned her head to doubt eyes. She just stood up, eyes burning stare at her. "Elder sister previously but promised me that princess's private seal and that bitch's house things. Now, don't forget, princess's private seal? What a princess's private seal can do is naturally very important. What does Shueji want? And what's in her room? What's in her room?" It's not a simple decision for Shueji. She must want to take the throne of princess after getting rid of her, the flower eyebrow heart light CU on the MO. Staring at Snow G's vision, can't help but take a few minutes dignified. Nana glanced at Shueji and said with a faint smile, "Sister, what's the hurry? This princess's private seal is not a small thing. Naturally, after getting rid of that slut, I will give it to you in person." "That's not what my sister said." The smile on Shueji's lips cooled down, and the soft voice disappeared. Seeing this, the smile between his eyes and eyebrows completely subsided. "Sister Shueji, although I promised you at the beginning, but I didn't say the specific time, you are so aggressive now. Is there anything that I want to do immediately? I can tell you that you have gained enough benefits now. Even the Lord has visited you every day recently. You have to think about it clearly. I'm afraid that if you want too much, you will lose it more quickly." Shueji was shocked by Nana's words, but she was still a little unwilling. She bit her lip and said, "Although the Lord has been here recently, I have paid the price to get it. My body has been suffering from the poison recently. I know that I have wronged my sister." Hearing this, then he turned his voice suddenly and became gentle again. "But I also have difficulties in this matter. Now we have to deal with the next step first, and that goal can be achieved smoothly, can't we? If you think about it, after the death of that slut, I'll be the princess, but in my heart, I just want to have a decent reputation with the prince. This private print is dispensable to me. Naturally, it's at your disposal." Shueji didn't believe it in her heart, but she had a smile on her face and said, "I know my sister's heart to the Lord. At that time, we will support each other and serve the Lord well, which will surely make Yujo take on a new look." After a pause, she took Nana's hand, patted it twice, and said with a smile, "But if it's really about grace, who can compare with you? I just want to hold something solid in my hand for the rest of my life. The South Crane drooped his eyes and looked at Shueji's hand on the back of his hand. There was a look of disgust at the bottom of his eyes, but he didn't brush it away. He said with a smile, "I've known the Lord for many years." After so many years of love, separation, the Lord has a place in his heart. Naturally, it's not the slut in the street. Only a few months of dew can compare. At this point, she could not help thinking that when she was injured while performing a task, he sent someone to deliver medicine to her. In addition, in the past, the corners of her lips and eyebrows were slightly tender. At that time, the Lord was very gentle to me, always different from others. Mo Shanghua only heard here. Then he didn't have the heart to listen. He put the tiles back again, then left quietly and went back to the mansion. After listening to the front words, she didn't have too many mood swings. She just had some knowledge of those things in her heart. But the back words made her very unhappy. The news for my people is that Yin Moli is escorting those people, and there's a huge team around him. It's very inconvenient to march. Now we can get to the imperial city. Hua Qianlu took the folding fan and gently shook it in his hand, with a smile on his lips. Yin Beicheng was dressed in black today, and his whole momentum was very arrogant. At this time, when he heard the words, his deep eyes were like a drop of ink, which seemed to dye the whole eye socket with ink. He said faintly, "The Emperor's will is above, and the land has not been designated. Flower thousand willow, eyebrows light pick, die a little curious. How? Do you want him to go not a fiefdom?" Yin Beicheng didn't shake his head or nod his head. Everyone thought that it would be difficult for the prince to succeed to the throne when he was sent to the fiefdom. But if you think about it in another direction, the fiefdom is the place far away from the emperor. It's a place where you can avoid suspicion and support troops. Yin Moli is not very popular with the emperor now. If this thing is done, his throne has been decided. If he asks for the fiefdom, the emperor will not forget to give it to him. He's very resourceful. If he does, will he let the tiger go back to the mountain? After a pause, he said, "So what I want to do is to let him have no face to open this mouth and ask the emperor to grant him land. As long as he doesn't mention it, I don't think the emperor will let him go to the fiefdom. It's his mother, Princess Jiang, who can only plead guilty." Hua Qianlu closed the folding fan and nodded to his chin. "That's right. Brother Beicheng's analysis is so clear. I'm afraid he's already laid a net. I'll just wait for him to go back and drill." "It's not a net." Yin Beicheng glanced at him and opened his thin lip. "It's just that he sent some people to ambush on the road and prepare to rob the prisoners he's locked up." Flower Thousand Willow, a pair of fox eyes, suddenly smile of "Am I? Get up. North City elder brother. You this and compare what clever means all want to be much stronger, just seem to have some bad morals." Yin Beicheng didn't answer. He hung his eyes and pinched an empty wine cup. He habitually put it in his hand and played with it. He didn't think much of Hua Qianlu's words. Oh yes, Hua Qianlu suddenly thought of something. She patted her forehead with Emil and said, "The people in Yuegwa said that the emperor had sent someone to urge him. I'm waiting for you to go back and calculate the astronomical phenomena for him." Speaking of the latter, the words are with a smile. "I don't know. You have such a study of astronomical phenomena. Admire, admire." Yin Beicheng raised his eyes and glanced at him. Instead of half fearless, he added with a smile, "How can Brother Beicheng meet? If I could meet you, I would not have been with you for a long time." Yin Beicheng closed his eyes, and there was no expression on his cold face. "The inspector is coming soon, the person who came this time." Before he had finished his sentence, he heard the door knocked gently. "Young master, the girl has come back and ordered a lot of wine. Would you like to have a look?" Before Hui Qianliu accepted, Yin Beicheng got up and opened the door with 3 and 5 steps. He looked at the maid and said, "Where are the people?" The maid was a stranger. She was surprised to see Yin Beicheng. Then she gave a blessing and said, "I've invited you to the elegant room on the 3rd floor. It's the first room on the corner of the 3rd floor." As soon as the voice fell, Yin Beicheng was no longer in sight. The maid took a look at the flower willow, which was still sitting in the room. She couldn't help asking, "Young master, don't you go and have a look?" Hua Qianlu put the folding fan she had been holding in her hand to one side, took up the wine cup in front of her, and gently raised a self-mocking radiant on her lips. "What's the matter between them?" And me, the maid, choked and sighed, as if she had lost her folding fan and looked like a flower willow. "Their child has always been a romantic person in my class. When did he do this for a woman? How do you know I'm here?" Mo Shanghua just poured a glass of wine, and before he had time to eat, he saw Yin Beiqing appear in front of him. His eyebrows could not help but slightly frown. "Did the two people who followed me tell you again?" Yinbei City closed the door, walked to her side, said, "You don't care how I know, you just tell me, but recently there are too many things you can't bear. This is here to drink." Mo Shanghua neither shook his head nor nodded, but frowned at him. Yin Beicheng raised his hand, took the wine cup in her hand, sat down beside her, and said, "There should be many things tomorrow. If you drink too much, you must have a headache tomorrow morning, or drink less. If you are really upset, you might as well tell me that I will share the burden with you." The more he said that, the more inexplicable and boring he was. She pursed her lips. After a while, she said in a hoarse voice, "Let your dark guard go back. Don't follow me quietly in the future." After a pause, she added, "I don't like being watched all the time." Yin Beiqing didn't expect that Mo Shanghua would say this. He was stunned for a moment, but he still couldn't bear to refuse and said, "Okay, but I think you should tell me what's the matter with you." Mo Shanghua shakes her head. She doesn't care about the wine already on the table. She gets up and goes out. "It's late. I'll go back to my house to have a rest. If I have something to do, I'll talk about it tomorrow." Wild Goose North City, some inexplicable looking at the figure of flowers on the street gradually. The heart did not understand to the extreme. What happened to her? Why did she refuse to say anything? Or did he do something wrong? Is frowning to think. The body side shoe but rang out Mo Ling careful voice. "Lord, that person want to withdraw to come back." Naturally. Yin North City, this just returned to God, immediately answered. Chinya stayed in the house, as usual, waiting for Mo Shanghua to come back. As soon as she came back, she seemed to have something wrong with her face. She asked anxiously, "Princess, what's the matter with you? How can I go out and look so bad?" Mo Shanghua shakes her head, sits on the edge of the bed, and thinks for a long time, then raises her eyes again. At that time, her eyes have no half assent, and she is as melancholy as before. She has recovered her former quiet and indifferent color. "Chinya, there are few things." Seeing this, Chinya immediately came over and quickly attached her ears. Mo Shanghua saw this and lowered her voice. She told her carefully in her ear, "Wu Cheng's affair has not yet come to an end. It was supposed to be the inspector who arrived in Yuzhou City 3 days later, but suddenly a letter came, saying that he was about to arrive at the gate of the city. Mo Shanghua had not yet come 2 days ahead of time, so she was pulled over by Chinya. After dressing up carefully, she went out of the city with the team prepared by Yin Beicheng, ready to meet the inspector from the Imperial City. Mo Shanghua never thought that the inspector sent by the Imperial City this time would be Yin Sinshuan. He has always been sick and weak. Whoever thought that it would be his turn to rush about like this? Now, however, he looks pretty good. As soon as Yin Sinshuan's team and Yin Beicheng's team met, he subconsciously searched in the crowd. When he was young, he fell on the beautiful cheek of the flower in the street. In an instant, his eyes swept thousands of lingering attachment, like a long time under the general silk, gently pull, then pull out the strands of lingering. The person he likes is the original owner of the body. The stranger thinks that he is not the original owner. When he stares at him like this, he feels very uncomfortable. When he is at a loss, fortunately, he has moved his eyes. Since Yin Beicheng saw that the inspector was Yin Sinshuan, his face turned dark. At the moment, Yin Sinshuan came and looked at his princess first. Naturally, his heart became more and more unhappy, but he pulled out a smile on his face. It turns out that the inspector mentioned by his father is actually 13. You see, you can't tell me in advance, but you quietly put forward your schedule and made a good deal of money. Wang is in such a hurry that he can't even get ready for your reception. Yin Xinchuan's body was thin, and his facial features were soft and handsome. At that time, after listening to Yin Beiqing's words, he suddenly twisted a gentle smile on his lips, which showed that he was weak and delicate, warm as jade. It's not 13. I feel better when I come here. I'm afraid that I'll delay my brother's business if I come late. Unexpectedly, not only I didn't delay my brother's business, but also I made my brother in a hurry. Right, I don't think about it well enough. Now it's midsummer, and it's noon. The sun is just in front of us. People around us are sweating, and horses are rubbing their front hooves restlessly. Mo Shanghua glanced at Yin Beicheng and saw that there was no sweat on his white cheek, but Yin Xinchuan, who only stayed in the sun for a while, but his face was not very good. He said, "Now is the most poisonous time of the sun, and this is not a place to talk. Your Highness would better follow us back to the palace. Although we are in a hurry, it's not a good place. The reception banquet is indispensable. When you enter the banquet, the Lord is chatting with His Royal Highness if there is nothing wrong with Mo Shanghua. He is a person with few words, but now he has so many words and is still so concerned." Thinking of this, Yin Beiqing was more and more unhappy. The more she said that, the more he wanted to refute her face and said, "It's okay. 13. I heard that you are in a hurry all the way. How can you stand your bad health? Is it not that your father invited some immortal to refine the elixir and cure your disease? There's no fairy pill." Yin Xinchuan couldn't help laughing. He looked as warm as ever. He didn't see any dissatisfaction. "It's just my disease. It's always like this. I'm better today. Maybe I'll be seriously ill tomorrow. It all depends on the will of heaven." As he spoke, the thin sweat on his forehead became more and more. In a short time, it had condensed into big beads of sweat which fell down his cheek. His hair was soaked with sweat, and his white cheek became extremely red because of the sun. However, his thin lips were completely pale, and there was no blood. Yin Beicheng didn't know how to stay for a while, but Yin Xinchuan's face was not good, but he didn't mention the matter of going back. He continued, 13, you are not honest. I've heard that you are the eye of my father. Since I was a child, I've loved you all the way. The doctor naturally wants to invite the best. What's God's will? What do you think? It's the father's kindness. Words, as if with a bit of acid in general. Yin Xinchuan raised his hand and wiped the sweat on his forehead. He reluctantly laughed without saying anything. Zhao Wei, who was behind him, glanced at his face. His face sank a little, and he said, Your Highness Yuang, Your Highness Sure San is weak. He has been running on the road for such a long time. Now he can't continue to bask in the sun. Otherwise, he can't stand it. Before the end of the future, but by His Majesty's thousands of exhortations, we must make sure that Your Highness is in good health. Please also take Your Highness's body as the most important thing, and talk about the past, or wait until Your Highness is better. Even the Emperor moved out. Naturally, Yinbei's city did not continue to let Yin Xinchuan bask in the sun, so it was enough. He raised his hand and said, Go back to the palace. The two teams formed a team and headed for the city. The Emperor's favorite prince came to the imperial city. Yin Beicheng came to meet him in person. Naturally, the battle was not small. On the road, people gathered in the street and craned their necks to watch. Originally, they were just discussing the rumors about Yin Xinchuan. Now, when they met the real person, the discussion was much weaker. Instead, they turned to the Mo Shanghua, who came with them. Well, you see, the woman next to her is Princess Yu, right? I didn't expect the real person to look so handsome. Or the beauty of snakes and scorpions. How many concubines died in the palace when she poisoned them? And the rich businessman who offended him before, but now they're all here, and none of them come to a good end. It's really evil. Hey, look at the 13 prince's face. It must be that this woman's life is hard, and the 13 prince's life is thin. She can't stand such a gram. Many of the chattering discussions fall into Zhao Wei's ears, and his exploring eyes can't help falling on the stranger. This woman, when she was on the road, suddenly seemed to be a different person. Is she more unscrupulous now that there is no control in Yujo? No, he has to pay attention these days. If it's true, he will go back and report it to His Majesty. Yin Beicheng has been busy with other things these days. He has no idea that the rumors in the city have developed to this point. At this moment, his eyes suddenly sank, and his eyes were full of violence. Even Yin Xinchuan, who was extremely uncomfortable at the moment, barely held up his spirit and paid a little attention. After listening to some remarks clearly, his face, which was not very good-looking, became more and more ugly. His body has always been so bad. When he arrived at the palace, before he had time to go to the reception banquet, he couldn't hold on and fell in front of the palace. The happy palace he had just prepared suddenly became a mess, and he was in a hurry to find a place for him. Zhao Wei's face changed a lot. As if something had happened to him, he quickly picked up the two royal doctors who were with him and helped Yin Xinchuan diagnose and treat him. Although he had a heart, Zhao Wei and the two royal doctors couldn't get involved at all. The emperor gave Yin Xinchuan a lot of servants in the imperial city. Yin Beicheng didn't have to worry about it, so he stayed outside with Imo Shanghua, waiting for the news from the imperial doctor. The man inside was obviously ill by Yin Beicheng, but now he was sitting on the seat drinking tea as if nothing had happened. Seeing his appearance, Imo Shanghua felt a little angry and asked, "Why are you gossiping at the gate of the city today? I have already reminded you that the sun is so poisonous and your royal highness is so weak that everyone knows it. How can you stay in the sun for such a long time?" Yin Beicheng turned his eyes and looked at the flowers on the street. His eyes blinked gently, and his slender eyelashes swung gently. His face was full of innocence. "I'm just thinking that it was a few months ago since I last saw the 13th Emperor's younger brother. I miss him so much that I can't help saying a few more words." After a pause, he added, "I only said 2 more words here. Who knows that his body is so weak? This damn big-tail wolf." Imo Shanghua saw that he looked like this, and his anger became more and more exuberant. She could not help biting her teeth and said, "How many times have you met Prince 13? Why, just a few aspects make you worry about this half-brother. Wang Yi is really affectionate. Yin North City Mao color is cold a few minutes. The lip cape lightly picks a few minutes. You see with him a many. I forgot. You did see a lot of them." Suddenly, he stood up and stared at him straight. "What do you mean by that?" But Yin Beicheng looked away, did not look at her, and did not answer. As soon as Qinya saw that the atmosphere was not right, she turned her eyes, looked inside, and said, "Prince and Princess, I just heard the imperial doctor say that your highness seems to have some heat stroke. Would you like me to order someone to boil some sour plum soup first?" The congealed atmosphere was a little bit more relaxed. She quickly pulled the flowers on the street. "Princess, the plum that the chef just arrived today is very fresh. Will you go and have a look with me? Now it's time to have lunch. I'd better supervise the big guy to get ready." Say, "Don't wait for Imo Shanghua to reply. Then pull her sleeve directly, drag her out." Imo Shanghua simply takes her eyes, so she lets Qinya drag herself out. After they went out, they didn't go to the kitchen as Qinya said. Qinya knew that Imo Shanghua was in a bad mood now, so she followed her around the palace. Imo Shanghua did not speak, so she pursed her lips and walked around the house aimlessly. Qinya follows Imo Shanghua. Seeing Imo Shanghua in a gloomy state, she thinks about it and asks in a low voice, "Princess, what's the matter with you recently? It's not that you are in a bad mood. It's that you are always with the prince. A lot of bickering?" Later, she turned around in her throat and finally swallowed it back. "I don't know, maybe in summer, the weather is dry." Qinya tilted her head and looked at the flower on the street. After thinking about her beautiful cheek for a long time, she suddenly said, "Look, concubine, all your happiness and anger these days are not because of the Lord. Is it the Lord who has gone to Shueji and neglected you? Or," after a pause, she stirred her sleeve and hesitated for a long time. Then she said, "I've heard about that 13 Highness before. You've been in love with him since childhood. Is it because he What's on your mind? The thoughts of Hua Fan's leaving on the street were immediately pulled back by Qinya's words, and he turned around in tears and laughter. Your Highness is not in good health. I used to help him diagnose his pulse quietly before. I knew his physical condition and that he couldn't stand the noon sun, so I told him. Qinya bit her lip, half puzzled and half unclear. Then why did you have a quarrel with the Lord just now? The flower on the street choked. She turned back, raised her hand and pinched a leaf, and said, Your Highness is the inspector sent by the imperial city this time, and he is also the emperor's favorite prince. If anything happens to him, I'm afraid the whole Yuzhou will suffer. Naturally, I'm more interested. Qinya, however, turned her lips. Obviously, she didn't completely believe it. Princess, look, there are so many troubles in recent days that you are so stupid. The prince was so jealous that you can't even see it. Emo Shanghua, suddenly Lung, came down, obviously didn't think of this layer before. However, when she thought of Nanha, the subtle emotion just rose in her heart, disappeared. It has nothing to do with me. When Qin Yatin choked, he walked around to Emo Shanghua and wondered, Princess, what are you vomiting? Or did someone else really offend you? Emo Shanghua kneaded the leaves in her hand and changed their shape. Her slender fingers were stained with a lot of green juice, but she didn't realize it. What else can she do besides the usual trifles? Seeing that she refused to admit it, Qin Yajing wanted to ask some questions, but suddenly a soft female voice came from behind. I have seen the princess. Xueji is well-dressed and dignified. On her delicate cheek, she doesn't look sick. On the contrary, she looks good. Emo Shanghua busily threw the leaves that had been rubbed and rotten in her hands. Then she turned around and looked down at Xueji, who was saluting to Zhengfu. Get up. Thank you, princess. Snow G-soft voice-off language way thanks. This just Inging gets up. Qinya stares at Xueji's ruddy cheek. She has no good face on her face. She can't help but say, Look, Madame Shuel looks so good. Where's she going? Xueji's handkerchief hand raised her hand and touched her cheek with a smile on her face. The maid next to the princess can really talk. I heard that when the maid was poisoned a few days ago, the princess was also the maid of the school. Is that the girl? Say, Mao Guangying falls on Qinya. Emo Shanghua pulls Qinya behind him and says faintly, She's right. It's a pity that she's clumsy. She didn't find out that day, but it made you suffer some grievances. After a pause, she glanced at a jade bead flower in Xueji's bun and said, Sister, I look at this bead flower very chic. It seems that I have seen it somewhere. Qinya, if I remember correctly, does the South Imperial concubine have the same one? Qinya raised her eyes and looked at the pearls in Xueji's hair. She said without a smile, I'm stupid, but I look a little like you. It's just that the hairpin seems to be the beloved of the South Imperial concubine. I often wear on my body. How can I give it to others? Princess, I think we are wrong. Smell speech. Mo. Shanghua stares at that bead flower to see again. The corner of lips lightly picked a few minutes, if have no radiant. After you say so, seem to really only have a few minutes similar, just is not an object. Side imperial concubine, that is the treasure that the prince bestows. Here to seem to still be the thing of that year. Poor don't know. You this again come from where? Xueji's eyes flashed. She lifted her hand and pulled out the jade pearl flower. She said, It's just that the Lord came to see my maid a few days ago. I'm sorry that there is no pearl flower on my head. I'm willing to give it to you, if the princess likes it. In fact, Mo Shanghua didn't say wrong. The hairpin was given by Nanha before. She also believed what Mo Shanghua said. She only felt that Nanha secretly put himself together and scolded Nanha thousands of times in her heart. I don't know, the words of Mo Shanghua just now are all picked up by her mouth. As for whether it is a rare object or a thing of love, how can she know? Mo Shanghua raises her hand to pick up the emerald pearl flower in Xueji's hand. She looks down at it carefully. There are no waves in her quiet eyes. She just looks up and down in Xueji's heart. However, Mo Shanghua just looked at it casually and then put the pearl flower on Xueji's temples again. She said with a smile, It's a pity that the jade is so good. It's better for me. It's better for you to wear it. Shueji felt relieved in her heart and immediately pulled out a smile on her face. The princess's sister is too modest, and her sister is beautiful. It's very good to wear anything. No matter the appearance or the words, they all seemed to have returned to what they had done when they made friends with Imo Shanghua a few days ago, as if they had never happened. Just then, I saw a young man turn out from behind Shueji. After seeing the ceremony, he said to the stranger, "Princess, your 13 Highness is awake." The prince asked if you want to go and have a look. The full and ruddy lips of the flowers on the street couldn't help sipping, but they didn't answer. Seeing this, the young man said, "The Lord said that his 13 Highness came all the way and fell ill as soon as he came. It's because we didn't take good care of him. You and the Lord are the masters of the palace. Naturally, you should bear the responsibility together and pay for his 13 Highness." Shueji was listening, and her eyebrows could not help but slightly jump. Her heart was like a weight, and she suddenly fell down. The same master of the palace. Yin Beichen can say such words now. It can be seen that he really put Imo Shanghua on the top of his heart. But if Imo Shanghua continues to be so powerful, won't he destroy their affairs even more in the future? Only by this point, the flowers on the street cannot be left. Imo Shanghua didn't pay attention to Shueji's expression. The boy's words were enough to move her, so she didn't look for any excuses. She just said, "Go back to the Lord. I'll go to the kitchen and take the sour plum soup." Yes. The boy bowed himself to give another salute and then retreated. Imo Shanghua is about to go to the back kitchen and bring the sour plum soup in person. Then she hears a particularly sharp female voice behind her and says, "I'm really lucky. I just came out to breathe. I saw the princess." The flower eye on the street once crossed a few minutes impatient, but still turned to the person behind to see. Unexpectedly, the person who appeared behind her at this time was Pingji, who had been banned from walking before. Her swollen cheek had been well, but this month's confinement did not seem to be very good. She seemed to have lost a lot of weight, and her eyes were slightly sunken, which made her mean. CMO, Shenghua, turn around. This is perfunctory and reluctant blessing body line a gift. Shueji, see her salute, also followed by a gift. Pingji's eyes enviously swept the jade pearl flower added in Shueji's hair, and her tone suddenly became sour. After only a few days, Shueji has found a good master? Oh, it seems that you're really following the right person. You're getting rid of your usual poverty. Shueji's identity in the mansion is just a civilian woman. She has always been in poor health and can't be spoiled. She is the most humble existence in the mansion. Now she is suddenly dressed up and looks better. Pingji is naturally jealous. Before she could see the flowers on the street, her eyes swept around the flowers again. When she caught a glimpse of the green and white fingers on the flowers, it seemed that she saw something ridiculous. She covered her lips and began to laugh. The princess is more and more dressed today. Why? Is the green touch on her fingers a popular ring in the city? Recently, what do you mean by style? Or did the princess stay with the small family for a long time and also be infected with the poverty? Oh, I've forgotten that the origin of the princess is not so glorious. This remark is really a thorough offense to both of them. Without waiting for the flowers to bloom, Pingji, who usually looked very gentle, turned cold and said, "Sister, I'm not from a high family. If you don't feel comfortable with me, you can say something about me. But what's the status of the princess, and how can it be criticized at will? The concubine's birth is not high. Is it difficult for her to be a noble son born by a foot-washing girl from a rich merchant's family?" After a pause, she said, "I'm not from a high family, but at least I'm from a high family. I can't compare with you." Qin Yadin laughed, provoking Pingji, who was so proud that her face became more and more ugly. She clenched her fists with hatred. She could not vent her anger in her heart. She simply pointed to Qinya and said in a hate voice, "No matter what my family background is, I'm a master in the house now. Princess, look at the good slave you raised. How dare you even laugh at him now? If not severely punished, how can you convince the public?" Qin Yadin received a smile, innocent face turned to see flowers on the street. Emo Shanghua took 2 steps to Pingji's direction, and her ruddy and full lips gently said, "What Pingji said is that my people are disrespectful to you, so it's time to punish them. However, the next people are like this, so you and I should set an example." Pingji hearted tight, grasped the cuff, strong support momentum way. "What do you mean?" Emo Shanghua raised her hand and gently smoothed Pingji's broken hair to her temples. Then she helped her trim her dress. She said, "It's nothing. It's just that my sister should be more respectful and polite when she sees me next time." As soon as her voice fell, her voice suddenly turned, as if she had changed into a person. She said in a cold voice, "Come on, Shueji, you can't be forgiven for contradicting the princess. I'll drag you down and play 20 boards to punish you." As soon as the words fell, Qin Lin immediately brought 2 boys over and directly pressed Pingji on the ground to get the board. Pingji's whole face was completely white, and then it was gradually replaced by burning red. Her slender nails were clasping the ground with hatred, and she said in a hate voice, "Bitch, you remember. These, as well as before. She will come back sooner or later." However, no matter what she said, it was useless. The flower on the street had already gone far away, but her punishment was not reduced because the flower on the street had left. She fell under her buttocks. She couldn't help crying in pain. Shueji didn't leave immediately. Instead, she stares at her punishment. After a while, she feels bored and then gets up to leave. "Just now I heard from the royal doctor that your highness is suffering from heat stroke. This is the sour plum soup just boiled by the back kitchen. It has the effect of pyrolytic heat. Have a taste of it, your highness." Emo Shanghua stands in front of the collapse. As she talks, she takes a bowl of sour plum soup from the tray in Qinya's hand and sends it to Yin Sichuan's maid. The maid took the bowl and was about to feed Yin Sichuan to drink it, but he waved his hand and took the bowl himself. He took 2 mouthfuls of it. After only 2 drinks, she put it aside and said, "It's better than the taste in the imperial city." The princess looked at the cooking and must have told her a lot. The princess really bothered. As a matter of fact, according to his seniority, he should call Imo Shanghua Huang Sa. However, the 2 words went round and round in his throat, but the exit was blocked. In any case, he could not get out of his throat. Especially when he saw her standing with the man beside him, his heart became more and more uncomfortable. Mingming also knows that the person in front of him is not really her. He thought that the reason why he did so was that his body was still the same. If not, he would not have begged the emperor for a long time. Anyway, he would have invited himself to Yuzhou. Yin Beicheng seemed to see what Yin Sichuan was thinking. He raised his hand and took the flowers in his arms. He said with a smile, "You are too polite. Anyway, Fei is also the emperor's sister-in-law of your direct relatives. You're injured in our place. Naturally, we should take care of you. When you are well, I will set up a reception for you and make amends." "That's too expensive." Yin Sichuan's eyes were fixed on Yin Beicheng's hand holding the flowers on the street. After a while, he could move away. He forced out a smile. At the moment, the treasury is not abundant, and disasters are happening everywhere. There are too many places to use money. The emperor's brother should not only save these useless money, but also save money. However, Yin Beicheng waved his hand and said, "The expenses in the palace are always provided by the shops in the name of the palace. The territory like Yuzhou doesn't cost much. In addition, every year's salary doesn't need to be used up. 13, you don't have to worry about it. This reception banquet must be held." Emo Shanghua knew that he was just being polite. After thinking about it, he should also say, "It's not urgent. Your Highness, it's the first priority to take good care of your health. When you are well, this reception can be well held." Yin Sichuan raised his eyes and looked at the flowers on the street. His lips moved slightly. It seemed that he had something to say, but there was only a very short sentence in his mouth. "So, I'll trouble you." At this time, it was obviously not the time to talk about business. Emo Shanghua and Yin Beicheng did not mention military expenses. After another charge, They left here for a while to let Yin Sichuan have a good rest. As soon as they left, Zhao Wei came to Yin Sichuan. Yin Sichuan saw that he wanted to talk and stop. He immediately understood and sent all the people in the room down with a wave. You all go down. If you have something, we will pass it on to you. Seeing that all the people in the hall had retreated, Zhao Weifang said, Your Highness, when the last general just entered the city, he heard some words. I wonder if you also heard them? Those are the words that are not to the ear. Yin Sichuan sat up with his bed in one hand, and there was no wave on his face because of Zhao Wei's words. Those are just rumors that are not on the top of the table. The so-called rumors, few of them will be true. Why should the general listen to and believe them? Zhao Wei does not think so. A loyal face full of awe. Can Ma Jiang think, if rumors accumulate more, it cannot be groundless. Always some credibility. Yin Sichuan has not refuted. Lift Mao to fixative stare at him. Zhao Wei did not evade, and let Yin Sichuan stare at him like this, saying, At the end of the day, I will think that when I go back to the imperial city, I'd better report it. After a pause, he took a look at Yin Sichuan's face and said, No matter whether it's true or not, this rumor is so serious. It's time to report it to your majesty to see if it needs to be calmed down so as not to pollute the reputation of the princess. Even if you want to report, you have to see the truth first. After pondering for a long time, Yin Sichuan opened his mouth, and his eyes were full of firmness. Our palace is the inspector of this Yuzhou trip. Naturally, I am in charge of this matter, and I want to report it. After seeing it clearly, I will report it myself, so don't worry about it. Zhao Wei's thick black eyebrows suddenly wrinkled into 8 characters, as if thinking of something, and said, Your Highness, what else do you think about this Princess Yu? If not, why do you want to protect everything like this? In the past, there were some rumors about the 13 princes and the Prime Minister Liu Qianqian in the imperial city. However, later, there was a story about the true and false Qianjin. If they were in love with each other, naturally, they could only disappear. When they first heard about it, he didn't think it was true. Now it seems that it is true. Yin Sichuan's face, which had no blood color, turned white again. It seemed that those who had appeared before. His right hand could not help clenching his fist slightly. The white jade finger on his thumb touched between his fingers. The cool touch pulled him back from his memory. His thin lips could not help sipping and said, I just said that rumors are not believable. Zhao Wei Lung, and then could not help but raise his hand to touch his brain, a face of embarrassment. Seeing this, Yin Sichuan gently breathed out a breath and said slowly, How is Princess Yu? Let's stay longer. We can always know. I'm afraid I can't stand running in a short time. The general really doesn't have to be in a hurry. Zhao Wei nodded. The inn will understand. Later we'll personally pay attention to some. Your Highness's body is not good, or good health and recuperation is good. When recuperation is good, we can talk about other things. Mo Shanghua is walking side by side with Yin Beicheng, but both of them have their own thoughts. Along the way, no one spoke first. It was not until she returned to the dockyard and went to spend her own room that she could not help turning around and looking up at Yin Beicheng. What are you doing here? Yin North City shrugged, or outside that pair of languid appearance. You are my king's princess, my king to you this place how? Isn't that normal? The flowers in the street were blocked by his words, and there was no way to refute them. He simply opened the bead curtain and walked towards the inner room, leaving a hard word in his mouth. Help yourself. I don't think so. Yan Beicheng but pick eyebrow. The villain a gang of Baba together up. I want you to accompany me. Say, raise a hand and then grasp the hand of Mo Shanghua. Pull her to own bosom. Mo Shanghua subconsciously struggled twice, but the result was the same as that of countless times before, and he couldn't struggle at all. She simply gave up the struggle, looking at Yin Beicheng helplessly. What are you going to do? Yin Beicheng stares at Mo Shanghua's delicate cheek for a while. He can't help but raise his hand and gently pinch it on the tip of her nose. You can't really see it or you can't fake it. I'm here, but it's very sour. Said he grabbed the hand of flowers on the road to his left chest, the position of the heart. But the whole bubble in here, if you let him bubble down, I'm afraid it will be rotten. Because she was held by Yin Beicheng. Her whole palm was forced to be placed on Yin Beicheng's heart. Through her thin clothes, she could even clearly feel the strong and powerful heartbeat of Yin Beicheng under her palm. Flowers on the street cannot help but lung and lung. The whole person is frozen there. This time, the helpless person changed into Yin Beicheng. He couldn't help pinching the tip of the flower's nose again and said with a straight face, "Wood, you are really a wood." Mo Shanghua, this just returned to God. Some dull, raised his head to look at him. Acid. Yin Beicheng saw that she seemed to be enlightened. He nodded vigorously. It's so sour, even the old fox can smell it. Mo Shanghua pursed her lips and took her hand back from his heart. After a long time, she said, I have nothing to do with Yin Sinshuan. I will care about him and see that he is not well. If something happens in Yuzhou, it's not a good ending. What Yin Sinshuan likes is the original owner, and the people he has been with are also the original owner. Naturally, it has nothing to do with her. It is because of the original owner. Thinking about it, she added, I just didn't understand why you did that before now. Now I know that I will not be angry with you. Later, she did not continue to say, only half said, then the rest and swallow back. In that case, she really can't say it. However, she thought that even if she didn't say it, Yin Beicheng would understand. Yin North City lips cape this just arouses a bit of smile, raise a hand to take the Mo Shang flower in own bosom, pull the distance of two people closer, more intimate. Mo Shanghua was just pulled by him, and half of his body was leaning into his arms. Now, the whole person has been hanging on him, and his cheek is close to his chest. Even the breath of his whole body can be clearly smelled. Yin Beicheng's slender, thin fingers through the Mo flower's soft, smooth hair. Voice is particularly low and pleasant to hear. Mo, son. The flower quilt on the street was so confused that it called for a moment. After a long time, it raised its head and said, Call me. Is there anyone else? Yin Beicheng couldn't help laughing. He raised his hand and stroked her disordered hair. If there's something unhappy or jealous, you have to say it to me just now, you know? Say it. The flower eyebrow tip on the street lightly picked to pick, always inside the eyes of quiet and quiet, but at the moment like a clear spring at the end of visible general, water run, crystal clear tight. Yin Beicheng couldn't help rubbing the hair he had just taken care of for her again. His voice was very gentle. I know you have a lot of things hidden in your heart. Don't be bored today. Can you say it? If you don't tell me, how can I know where you are unhappy? Is he guiding himself? Mo Shanghua can't help pursing her lips and retreated from his arms. Do you know? What she said is about Nanha. Yin North City Mao light flashed for a while. The complexion is like old. As long as you don't say, I don't know anything. In fact, yesterday after Mo Shanghua left, he talked with Hui Qianliu for a long time. Hui Qianliu finally told her that Mo Shanghua had asked about the relationship between Nanha and him twice. Today, I was not angry for a moment. I was trying to open my heart with her, but later it's still hard to control. Fortunately, it's better now. He fixed looking at the flowers on the street. As long as you ask, I will tell you all. Such affectionate. Mo Shanghua, after all, is a woman. How can it be indifferent? But about the South Crane, it has almost become her heart knot. For a while and a half, she really can't say. However, when Yin Beicheng thought that she was so calm, when she just said that she was jealous, she was not so uncomfortable. She sipped her lips and said, You are with Nanhe, what's going on? After a pause, she said, I heard him say that you have known her for many years, and you are in love with her, and then you take her back to the house. Smell speech, Yin North City whole body temperature suddenly dropped several layers. Water caltrip, clear cheek, contained frost general. She is so tell you? Mo Shanghua nodded. Seeing him like this, he guessed something in his heart. 1 second ago, the frosty face softened when he looked at the flowers on the street. He said in a soft voice, She is actually the leader of a department in my secret guard camp. She has been with me for many years. This time, I went to the government just to cooperate with me to complete the task. I used to treat her all kinds of things, but it was just a play on occasion. After a pause, he said, "For people like me, my heart is already stone. How can I have any feelings for my subordinates? You're the only one who is different. Sleepy so long, not suddenly so untie. Spend a time also some can adapt to come over, long for a long time, just some uncertain like asked, seriously?" Yan Beiqing raised his hand, 3 fingers together. "If there's a half-empty words, it will make it difficult for me to achieve great cause in this life, love not." A word hasn't finished. Emo Shanghua pulls down his hand. Hastily Wei, I believe. Since he was a child in Yuzhou, Yin Beicheng has been playing the role of a pig and eating a tiger. He has been hiding for so many years. What he is doing is clear to Emo Shanghua. Now that he is willing to swear with this, he has already taken out all his most important things. Naturally, she has no reason not to believe it. However, she didn't know that if she really wanted to choose the heaviest one in Yin Beicheng's heart, she would be the only one. But how could he be willing to take her to swear? Yin North City droops the MOU to settle of looking at Mo Shang flower nervous appearance. Can't help a long arm stretch. Embrace her into own bosom. Eyes lightly close up. Have you this words, just enough. Mo Shanghua raised her eyes and looked at him. She saw that he was gently knocking his eyes, soft and peaceful. She had never seen it before. However, there was a little joy in her heart. Thinking about it, she gently raised her hands to encircle Yin Beicheng's lean waist, but when she was about to touch his body, her hands stopped again, and her fingertips bent slightly. She still felt a little uncomfortable. Yin Beicheng seemed to feel her movements in general, and saw that she was hesitant. He directly raised his hand, grabbed her hand, and pressed it on his waist, and began to laugh low. Mo Shanghua's cheek suddenly turned red. She bit her lip and buried her head in Yin Beicheng's hard chest. Yin Beicheng gently rubbed her soft and smooth black hair with big hands, and her lips melted into a soft color, soft and gentle, just like a soft white cotton wadding. For a long time, Yin Beicheng just slightly restrained the smile on his face, and his face was slightly Sue. I received the latest information. The head of the Wu family has sent someone to come here. It's for Wu Cheng's sake. Now this matter has been introduced into the imperial city. Mo Shanghua retreated from Yin Beicheng's bosom, his face slightly coagulated. How can it be so fast? Although the state of the moon and the kingdom of God are adjacent, the place where the Wu family's lineage is located is the capital of the state of the moon. How can the capital of the state of the moon arrive at Yuzhou so soon? And the news from the imperial city is even more amazing. Yin North City lip corner slightly picked up an arc, the eyebrows cold and hard. Yuzhou City's eyeliner far more than you think. In the dark, I do not know how much hidden. No need to wait for the countryside, there's movement. The news has been handed to the emperor. I can't help but sink a little bit. I think in a few days, the emperor there will come under the will. Yin Beicheng nodded slightly, raised his hand, and gently pinched the white and greasy cheek of the flower on the road. However, you don't have to worry too much. I'll handle this matter well. At present, you just need to have a rest in the house for a few days. You don't have to worry about the bandits in Yuzhou City. Mo Shanghua raised his hand and caught him pinching his hand on his cheek. Lume could not help but frown. Although it's right that the city inspector arrived, Yin Xinshuan is now ill. How can we mention the banditry? Yuzhou bandits are so rampant. How can we wait for him to get better? At that time, I'm afraid Yuzhou had been robbed by bandits, and only the roots and weeds were left. Yin Beicheng shakes his hand, and his broad sleeve robe immediately blows like a breeze. It blows for a moment before it falls down again. He stood in front of the flowers on the street and said, "But what does Zhao Wei do? The emperor sent him to protect Yin Xinshuan?" Mo Shanghua's eyes turned slightly, and he knew vaguely in his heart. What do you mean? Let Zhao Wei come out to suppress the bandits. Yin Beicheng stood up and said, Yuzhou lost so many troops in order to pacify the rebellion in Anzhou. Where can we spare forces to pacify the bandits in Yuzhou? But the bandits are so rampant that we have to trouble General Zhao. After a pause, he said, besides, this should also be the purpose of Zhao Wei's visit. Even if we don't mention it, he will naturally speak. The flower on the street has a delicate chin, but the look inside the eyes is very clear. Yes, Yuzhou is also the territory of the Kingdom of God, and it is located at the border. It could be regarded as a frontier fortress. If these bandits are allowed to ignore, it is equivalent to putting the Kingdom of God in the tiger's mouth. The emperor should not only take care of it, but also take good care of it. It's natural. Yin Beiqing nodded gently, and there was no worry in his eyes. Mo Shanla paced in the hall for a few steps, then turned around and looked at Yin Beicheng. By the way, I think I'd better deal with Wu Cheng personally. Yin Beicheng's soared eyebrows slightly frowned. Before he spoke, he saw her saying, "This matter is aimed at me. Naturally, it's aimed at me. Naturally, it's inconvenient for you to deal with it for me. You can rest assured that I can deal with it." Mo Shanghua's appearance. Yin Beicheng's heart is also clear. She is not everything to others to deal with a weak woman, so he did not force. Good, but if there is anything can't deal with, just come to me. Although Yin Sichuan is ill, Zhao Wei and others have come all the way. This dinner party should be set up anyway. As for the reception banquet, we can wait for Yin Sichuan to get well and make a big show. After all, Yin Beicheng is a famous dandy. Naturally, this dinner is also held. Good wine, delicious food, singing and dancing are all indispensable. All the masters of the mansion, as well as some officials of Yuzhou, also came to the banquet. Even Pingji, who had just been released from the ban, also came to the banquet dressed up in colorful costumes. Such a banquet Mo Shanghua only feel boring, but as her identity still had to dress up, dignified sitting on the side of Yin Beicheng. Occasionally insert 2 words. Yinbei City is holding a glass, some with no one with Zhao Wei politely. Pingji hasn't seen Yinbei City for a long time. Looking at Yinbei City, sitting at the top, she doesn't have any feelings for him. But thinking of the wealth she wants in her heart, she raises her hand to trim her forehead, holds her wine glass, and walks forward with a graceful twist of her waist. Lord, with a soft voice, Yin Beicheng was bored, but he turned his head with a smile. Pingji took a few steps forward with her wine glass. Her eyes looked at the flowers on the side of Yinbei City. She said with a smile, "My lord, I haven't been able to serve you well these days. I'm very upset. I'm here to propose a toast. I hope the Lord will drink this cup. Otherwise, I can't be stable." Mo Shanghua just didn't see it. She turned her head and told Qinya in a low voice. Yin Beicheng didn't seem to know Pingji's careful thinking. With a smile on his lips, he squeezed the wine cup in front of him and said, "Since my concubine has such a mind, I can't help her." With that, he drank the wine directly. In her heart, Pingji raised her hand to cover her face with her sleeve and drank all the wine in the cup. Yin Beicheng drank the wine in the cup, but he did not forget to pour the wine over Ollie with a smile. As expected, there was no wine left in the cup. When Pingji saw this, she was a little more daring. She handed the wine to the maid behind her and walked to Yinbei City with her skirt. "Lord, let me serve you." Zhao Weiduan sat at the bottom of his head. Seeing this, he couldn't help laughing. He covered his eyes and thought deeply. He only said, "Your Highness is very lucky. There are so many beautiful concubines in the mansion, and each of them is so virtuous. In this far place, it can be regarded as the life of a couple." The words in front are just words of admiration, but the words in the back have another meaning. Yin Beicheng was clear in his heart, but he didn't seem to understand. He said with a smile, "Where?" As soon as the voice fell, a man dressed as a young man rushed in. "Lord, spy just came out of the city." Now the bandits in Yuzhou have become more and more rampant. A group of bandits even robbed a village directly in broad daylight. It seems that the country of the moon has also received news. The situation in the neighboring areas of the 2 countries has begun to get worse. Why? Is it difficult for him to be a little moon country and dare to violate our border? Yin Beicheng was half nervous about such an important military newspaper, and his face was full of disapproval. Next to Zhao Wei's immediately clap a case and rise, full of angry face. They dare. You people are good at business. In Zhao Wei's eyes, you people are just a group of ordinary people who can only hold an abacus. How can they compare with his magnificent kingdom? How dare they break the border easily? Imo Shanghua drooped his eyes and thought for a moment. His eyes were cool, and he said, "If you have something to do, it's hard to guarantee that the people of the Moon Kingdom won't use the excuse to play." Zhao Wei faced too puzzled. Puzzled looked to Imo Shanghua. What Wu Chang thing? Not waiting for Imo Shanghua to speak, when he arrived at Yin Beicheng, he was ignored. A thorough Pingji turned his eyes and said sarcastically, "When General Zhao first arrived in Yuzhou, he naturally didn't know that Wu Qing was the richest man in Yuegua. That day, he died in the place where the princess went to encircle and suppress bandits." With that, she covered her lips with a handkerchief and said with a smile, "Now, everyone in the city knows it. Naturally, the rumors are spreading all over the world." Presumptuous. As soon as his voice fell, he saw that Yin Beicheng, who had just been in full bloom, had a heavy face and put his wine glass on the table. "This matter is still under investigation. You could talk about it at will. Are there any rules?" Pingji's face suddenly turned white. She quickly got up and went around the seat of Yinbei City. She knelt down at the bottom of the head, and her face was full of grievances. "I'm sorry, but I haven't said much. Why is the Lord so excited?" Imo Shanghua got up and walked to Pingji. She looked at her with a smile in her eyes. "Pingji, I remember that you were punished for bumping into the princess yesterday. How come you just recovered today, and then you came here alive and ready to take revenge?" Pingji clenched her teeth and leaned over to touch the ground with her head. "My lord, I really don't mean to be with you. I hope you can see clearly. It's fashionable to ban people's feet. Now, as soon as you come out, the house is full of smoke. Go back quickly. Don't disgrace Basic Wang here." Yin North City sees this. A face impatiently waved a hand. The boar inside the mouth is not to conceal at all. Pingji was more and more aggrieved in her heart. She flattened her mouth and said, "Lord." Before the voice fell, the voice of the young man's high voice came out of the door. Yin Beicheng and others are all surprised. Looking to the door, Yin Sichuan's disease is not a few days. How did it get better so soon? However, since people have come, they naturally have to meet a little bit. When Yin Beicheng and others see this, they all come down from the seats to show their courtesy. "Don't you mean that the body of the 13 younger brother needs to be raised for some time? Why did he come here again?" Yin North City face, due worried will Yin Sichuan up and down a look, is very concerned about the inquiry. "I just want to live up to you." Yin Sichuan held his hand slightly, covered his lips, and coughed softly. He said, "But I just stopped at the gate of the hall for a while. I don't know that the bandits in Yuzhou are so rampant now. It said that I've been standing outside the hall for so long, but I didn't mention Pingji at all. It seems that my attention is all focused on the bandits, and I'm not interested in the others." However, Pingji, still kneeling on the ground, quietly raised her eyes and looked at Yin Sichuan, who was clear, handsome, and gentle. She quickly scratched something in her eyes. She was busy and lowered her head. She thought she was going down the slope and quietly returned to her position. "Your Highness is not well. You better sit down first." Imo Shanghua only glanced at the cheeky Pingji, who continued to sit down and had no intention to talk with her. "Thank you for your concern." Yin Sichuan Lien Mao Light returned a sentence. "A few people this just successively settled down. Brother 13, since you have just heard that Yuzhou is now almost eaten by the bandits. In the last Anzhou rebellion, I worked hard and made money, but now I'm broke. It's good to keep the stability of Yuzhou City. This bandit is not that I don't want to rule, but I'm not strong enough." As soon as he sat down, Yin Beicheng looked at Yin Sichuan with a sad face, and he was helpless. Imo Shanghua quietly glanced at Yin Sichuan's face and saw that his face was no longer as pale as before. Then he was a little relieved and sighed, cooperating with Yin Beiqing's words. "It's not easy for you to say that. Your Highness doesn't know. Some days ago, bandits broke out in this city and robbed many rich people's money. Even the foreign businessmen didn't let go of it. Now, those foreign businessmen are forcing me to give an explanation with you as soon as possible. But the military expenditure last time hasn't been paid. How can the palace have any extra money?" They tried their best to cry for poverty, and what they said was true. Naturally, Yin Xuan could not refuse. After pondering for a moment, he said, "My father and emperor had roughly explained the situation of Yuzhou when I came here, but I didn't expect that it was so serious now, especially that month country is about to move here." Emo Shanghua nodded and said to Yin Xuan, "Your Highness is the inspector sent by your Majesty. Please make up your mind anyway to save Yuzhou from fire and water." "I can't make up my mind. It's just my father's advice." When Yin Xuan saw this, he subconsciously wanted to help him. He stretched out half of his hand, but he immediately took it back. His eyes were a little astringent, and he tried to pretend nothing happened. He said, "But when I set out for Yuzhou, the bandits had not been reported. The Ministry of Household only allocated the previous military expenses, and the others didn't give me much." Zhao Wei thought about it for a long time, then stepped forward and said, "I heard that the princess has sent someone to arrest the robbers who robbed the rich businessmen and foreign businessmen in the city some time ago. The property should also be recovered. The general doesn't know that although the bandits in the city have been captured, many people in Yuzhou have been looted and many refugees have emerged. I have discussed with the Lord, and I always want to find a way to save them." Yanbei City quickly nodded, such as pounding garlic. Yes, the king and the princess have already discussed, ready to set up a few porridge sheds outside the city, relief victims. Zhao Weimei suddenly stood up, only to feel that it was a strange flower urging him to ask for more money, and said, "Why? When we were halfway to Yuzhou, your Majesty had been temporarily ordered to put down the rebellion in Yuzhou and specially allocated 3,000 elite soldiers to keep up with it. In addition to the 1,000 soldiers who originally escorted the Lord, it was not enough to deal with a group of bandits. After I have calmed down the bandits, the looted things of the common people can be taken back smoothly. Why do you do so much now? I'm afraid it's false to help the people." General Zhao. Yin Xuan doesn't think so and interrupts him. Although his voice is warm and not threatening, Zhao Wei still pauses a little when he hears the speech. Then he goes on, "General Zhao, the emperor's sister-in-law has a point. How can you talk such nonsense?" Zhao Wei, however, was unconvinced and retorted, "Even so, before, money was needed for relief in Anzhou, and the state treasury was already tight. If you come to Yuzhou, your Majesty may not approve it. Maybe you'll get a reprimand yourself." Yin Xuan shook his head gently. His eyes were still warm. He could not see any anger. He was only worried. He lowered his eyebrow and thought for a moment. Fong said, "Yuzhou is just in need of some money to relieve the victims. If the emperor is willing, I might as well write a letter and ask the account department to borrow money for the time being. It's good to make up for it next year. In this way, we don't have to disturb our father." "Your Highness, this..." Zhao Weimei frowned more tightly and jumped out to oppose. Before Zhao Wei spoke, Yin Xuan directly interrupted him. "General Zhao, my father always said that the people are the foundation of our country. Now, if we can't control this book well, my father will be really angry if he knows. But if he did, it would be that the emperor did not say it. How could he not be annoyed to see him?" Mo Shanghua never thought that Yin Xuan was willing to make such a decision for their sake. Naturally, Yanbei City can't wait for it. How much military expenditure did the emperor allocate this time? He knew for a long time that it was not enough to recruit more troops. If he didn't find a way to deduct more troops from the household department, could his secret guards with less than 500 soldiers be able to use them in the future? Besides, at that time, whether Yuzhou soldiers and horses will listen to his orders is another question. However, he did not expect that Yin Sinshuan stopped Zhao Wei's words, but Imo Shanghua suddenly said, "Your Highness, you can't do this." Although it's good for them, she really doesn't want to implicate Yin Sinshuan. After all, it's a matter of Yuzhou, which makes the people suffer. It's the incompetence of me and the Lord. We can't let you be implicated because of us. It's just a matter for the Lord to play more to His Majesty. Seeing this, Zhao Wei quickly echoed, "Your Highness, since the princess doesn't want you to interfere more, I think you'd better mind your own business." This General Zhao is too straightforward to say anything. The flower on the street murmurs and looks at Yin Sinshuan like nothing. As expected, he looks a little bit cool. He stares at General Zhao and says, "General Zhao." Zhao Wei realized later that he seemed to have made a mistake again. He was too busy to speak. Since Huang's sister-in-law and Huang's brother have their own way, it's not convenient for me to interfere more. Yin Sinshuan gently hooked his lips and said with a warm smile, "As for the bandits in Yuzhou, don't worry. Tomorrow morning, General Zhao will go to suppress the bandits, which will ensure the peace of Yuzhou. Wang Yi, Your Highness, please rest assured. Although Zhao Wei has never been on the battlefield for many years, I dare not forget the way of marching and using troops. There are only a few bandits. Within half a month, I will surely bring down all the bandits in Yuzhou." Zhao Wei has been stationed in the capital all these years, and usually only trains soldiers. Now he has a chance to show his fists. He is naturally excited. However, some bandits have only 2,000 elite soldiers, and he can still uproot them. If not for their scattered distribution, he would be able to settle the matter early. After the matter was settled, Zhao Wei naturally went out of the city to suppress the bandits according to the agreement the next day. As for Yin Sinshuan, he was not in good health, so he could not go to fight and kill. The matter of Wu Cheng has not been settled yet, so we can put it down for a while, but the matter of recruiting soldiers cannot be delayed. Yin Sinshuan, as an inspector, originally came here to supervise this matter. He had to take a look at the recruitment. His status is noble, no more than others. If he followed to the recruiting place, Mo Shanghua Yinbei City will also accompany with him. However, Mo Jiang sent people to talk in the crowd for a long time, but no one came to apply for the job. On the contrary, rumors kept on. After listening to the generous words of the recruiter, a young man's heart was boiling with enthusiasm. He was about to sign up, but he was grabbed by the people around him. "Don't go there in a hurry. Look, isn't the short man dressed up next to him Princess Yu? She's the most poisonous woman in the city. If you go, you'll be under his nose in the future. You won't feel well in the future. Please don't go. It's the same as jumping into the fire pit." That's right. Don't forget how the foreign businessmen in Yuegwa died. Didn't they offend her in the palace that day? After listening for a while, Mo Shanghua saw that the person who had been speaking in the middle of the crowd seemed to have heard the remarks of the people around him. His face became more and more embarrassed. He could not help but retreat and looked at Mo Jiang in embarrassment. "General, this." Mo Jiang twisted his sword eyebrows into his temples, took his sword in another hand, and said, "I'm changing some words. Go on. It's not the time for the whole nation to recruit soldiers. If the people who should serve in the army are forced to do so, they are afraid that they will be discontented. At present, they can't, so they can only recruit according to their will." The person in charge of recruiting and agitating was originally a military strategist. He was good at this at ordinary times. However, after listening to Mo Jiang's words, he could not help hesitating. "General, at the moment, my subordinates have said all the good things. What else can I say?" Between the words, we can see the meaning of complaining. Yin Beicheng sat in the temporary pavilion beside him and said, "I'm really surprised. While I was in Anzhou, I saw you talking so skillfully. Why are you so depressed now? If there's nothing to say, I don't want to be a military advisor." The military strategist felt more bitter in his heart, but he didn't dare to complain anymore. He leaned down and said, "My subordinates don't dare. I'll say something else. Then he quickly stepped forward and thought about it for a long time. Then he reconsidered his words and continued his speech. Mo Shanghua and Yin Xinchuan sat together for 2 or 3 hours in the temporary pavilion for them to have a cool rest. Until the sun set, there were only 5 or 6 people in Mo Zhang's list. Lord, we have been here for 2.5 hours. Do you want to continue? Mo Zhang looks at Yin Beicheng, who is frowning and looking at the list. He is also worried in his heart. Mo Shanghua took over the list from Yin Beicheng and looked at it, then looked at the sky. At present, there is still an hour to go before dinner. Even the onlookers have changed wave after wave. I'm afraid there won't be any result when I stay here. When I'm about to refuse, I see Yin Xinchuan pulling, with some morbid white lips, whispering, "Wait for half an hour." Mo Jiang heard the words and answered them without waiting for Yin Beicheng's reply. He went to tell the military advisor a few more words. As Yin Xinchuan's personal servant, Chen Kong can't help leaning over and whispering in his ear, "Your Highness, you are not in good health. You have been watching for so long before you have recruited so many people. Why do you have to say that you have found yourself guilty?" "I see. Why don't we go back first?" Yin Xinchuan shook his head, a calm and gentle color on his face, could not see the slightest impatience. Words have been out. They cannot be recovered. Let them wait. You can go back first. Otherwise, how can you stand it? Chun Kang's eyebrows and eyes were stained with a bit of resentment, and said, "Look, this good recruitment is all done by the Princess Yu. No one can get it. Even if you sit down, it's useless." Although his voice is small, he is a martial arts practitioner in Huayin Beicheng, and his hearing is always better than others. Naturally, he never loses a word. Even Mo Jiang, standing in front of him, clearly hears it, but he just doesn't hear it. He looks at the crowd without expression. Yin Xinchuan's eyes flashed over the delicate cheek of Mo Shanghua. His eyebrows wrinkled slightly. He turned his head and said, "Chen Kong, you've been impolite, and you don't want to make amends to Huang Sa." Chen Kong bowed his head and turned away reluctantly. He bowed to the flowers on the street and said, "I've just offended the princess. I hope the princess won't worry about me." Mo Shanghua glanced at him and frowned. It seemed that he was angry because of his bad attitude. He just looked at his face and didn't care much. He just waved his hand, "Get up." The boy got up and retreated to Yin Xinchuan again. Yin Beicheng's eyes fell on the boy and said, "Brother 13, I'm looking at you. You've been standing here for a long time and you're tired. Why don't you give him a seat and wait with us so that you won't be tired?" Chen Kang's face suddenly changed, and he looked to Yin Xinchuan for help. Yin Xinchuan frowned more tightly, but his words were still soft and gentle. "Brother Huang is serious. He just saw that I should take the medicine, so he said a few words." After a pause, he looked at Chun Kong and said, "You don't need to go back to take the medicine. Now go back and get it. Remember to come back as soon as possible." Yes. Chen Kong knew that Yin Xinchuan was trying to get rid of the siege for himself. He was relieved and went on in a hurry. Yin Beicheng took a cool look at the little boy who was running away. He was about to say something, so he was pulled by the flower on the street. Then he changed his voice and said, "Since he is the 13th brother, the emperor brother has nothing to say." Mo Shanghua just moved her eyes and was about to take the teacup on one side of the table to drink tea. Suddenly, a strange middle-aged man's voice came from the crowd. "Princess Yu is so elegant and cheerful. Yuzhou has killed and injured people. There is still time to taste tea here." The flower eyebrow heart on the street is a slight frown at first, and then ease to open in the heart to the person who is already had the preparation. This just don't hurry, not slow, of will Mao light toward the direction that the voice spreads. I saw a middle-aged man with smart and thin eyes, dressed in silk, walking out of the crowd, followed by several well-dressed young men in brocade. As soon as he came out, the light of his eyes went directly over several people around him and fell on the flower of the street. He was half afraid, half cautious, and a little disgusted and resentful. "This goal is so obvious," just said the words is so sharp This moment instantly attracted the attention of the people. People's eyes suddenly all fell on the flower and his body in two people back and forth walking. Before the flowers on the street got up, the teacups in their hand were sent to their lips to drink as usual, and then they spoke slowly. Can't you drink tea when you're thirsty? But you don't know who you are and why you are making such a noise here? The man stepped forward a few steps, first took a look at Yin Beicheng, then his eyes flashed over Yin Sichuan. Then he said, I'm a Wuru, the head of the Wu family in Yuegua. Wu Qing is my second brother, who died in vain in Yuzhou a few days ago. I'm here to seek justice for my brother. People around the theater suddenly burst the pot, one by one, like to see something new in general, stretch their necks to see. He's clear-cut, and his words are not impolite. He's much better than Wu Cheng. No wonder he's the leader of the Wu family. Mo Shanghua secretly pays attention to Wu Ru's words and deeds and turns a blind eye to the comments of the people around him. Yin Sichuan's brows suddenly wrinkled as soon as he eased. He didn't want to be criticized by the people here. He said, Mr. Wu is polite, but this is not a place to discuss things. According to our temple, you might as well follow us back to the palace first, and then come to investigate the matter. Before discussing the matter, you should first look at your brother's remains. Wu Ru inquired about the news long before he was about to enter the city. Looking at Yin Sichuan's appearance, he guessed his identity. He was a little worried, nodded slightly, and said, This is the 13th Highness of the Kingdom of God. I think you don't know something. It's not that I don't want to give you face, but I'm worried. Before he finished speaking, Mo Shanghua directly interrupted him and said, I think Master Bi Wu is worried that you are not familiar with your life and land. When you come to the palace, you will be manipulated and unfairly handled. In that case, please follow me to the city yamen to redress your grievances. After a pause, her eyes swept through the crowd. People can watch in the yamen. There are people here. I think Master Wu should be relieved now. Wu Ru was a little surprised to see Mo Shanghua. He never thought that Mo Shanghua would say that. In this way, does it not seem that she is magnanimous and he is narrow-minded? Thinking about this, he turned his eyes to Yin Beicheng, who was sitting on one side with a relaxed look. He immediately realized his identity, thought about it, and said, Is it true that women are the masters of the kingdom of God? He thought Yin Beicheng would be angry, but he just changed his hand and continued to support his chin. When he was free, his hand was very boring, playing with the tea set on the table, as if he had not heard him at all. Wu Ru's face was filled with embarrassment. The flower on the street glanced at him and said coolly, What about women? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.